Scripture lesson this morning is a familiar text from the book of 1 Kings, the 3rd chapter, beginning with the 5th verse. This is the dream that comes to Solomon when he begins his kingship. Now, when he has this dream, and by the way, my interpretation of this text this morning, it is doubtful you will find it in any commentary. All right? And the reason being is because most commentators are scholars and they don't know much about dreams. Okay? They don't know how God speaks in dreams. So they tend to take dreams at face value as if it's the same as waking life. But we all know that when we dream, we often dream things that we would never do in waking life, right? And so this dream comes to Solomon, and it's an important dream. And I believe it is from God. Now, you could argue that not every dream is from God, but God does speak through dreams. Sometimes people say, why doesn't God talk to me like normal? Well, normal is through a dream. That's one of the ways God speaks. But we Americans don't pay much attention to our dreams. And alarm clocks kill dreams. Okay, as soon as it goes off, that's it. We jump up, we're into life, and we don't lay there quietly and say, okay, I just had this dream. Oh, God, what are you trying to tell me? We don't usually do that. We don't have that luxury. But we need to recover it. All right, so dreams are an important part of my spiritual disciplines and something I do. So I'm looking at this dream that comes to Solomon through dream language. So the interpretation's a bit new. Now, I will say this. Any dream we have is usually fits something that's going on in our life. All right? So dreams don't come out of a vacuum. They come out of our life. So if we're thinking way this way, the dream might go this way. The dream will balance us out. The dream will try to address something of how we're thinking, how we're feeling, what we're choosing, what we've done or not done. Dreams usually tell us things we don't know, at least consciously. So this dream comes to Solomon. Now, what is his life situation? He is in his early 20s when he has this dream. All right, early 20s. He is now king over the kingdom of Israel. He is married. He has one child. Okay? He has just gotten to the throne in a unique way. First of all, his father, do you remember who his father is? King David. And his mother, you remember his mother? Bathsheba. All right? That's important to remember. Bathsheba. David. David had another wife before Bathsheba. Hadgith. Hadgith had children. And the eldest child who is alive is Abiathar. All right? No, is that right? No, it's Adoniah. Maybe Athar was that rugged priest or something. But anyway, no, it's Adoniah. Adoniah, I think, was his name. So Adoniah was the son who's the eldest son. And what do we know about kingship? Who usually gets the kingship? The eldest son. But King David is partial to Bathsheba, and he wants the offspring that come from Bathsheba, Solomon, to be the king. So he maneuvers this. Adoniah gets ready to become king, but David circumvents it, and he has Solomon become his co-regent before his death. All right? And Adoniah begins to see the writing on the wall here. He is not going to get to be king. He begs Solomon to let him live. Evidently, kings were quite adept at killing people. And if someone seemed to be a rival of a throne, they'd just have him killed. All right? So, Adoniah begs for his life, and Solomon grants it. And then he has this dream, but something happens before it. Adoniah goes to Bathsheba, the queen, and says, "Could I marry King David's nurse, Abishag?" Evidently, she did not look like her name. She was quite beautiful, Abishag was. And so he asked for permission to marry Abishag. And Solomon, of course, gets wind of this, and he interprets it in the worst possible way. He sees this as a move by Adoniah to maneuver himself toward the throne. So guess what Solomon does? He has Adoniah murdered. He kills his half-brother, all right? Kills him, along with other people who were connected to Adoniah. Kills a whole bunch of them. And then he has this dream when he's already in power. He's already murdered a bunch of people. And this is his dream. So you ready for this now? All right. Here we go. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept him. You have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. Although I am only a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this, your great people? It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life, or riches, or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor all your life. No other king shall compare with you. If you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life. Now let's remember, this is a dream. He asked God for this in the dream. God answers in the dream. I have lots of dreams, try to write them down. This is a common dream I have, one similar to it. I bet you've had a dream something like this. Goes like this. I sign up for a college course, advanced calculus. And I forget I signed up. I don't go to a single class. I don't do any of the homework. I miss all the tests till the final exam. And then suddenly I realize, I forgot to drop that course. In fact, I forgot to go to that course. And now I have a final exam, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I go in to take the final exam. And I'm there, and I'm open up the test booklet, and I look at these problems, and I don't know anything. And I realize I am going to flunk out. And I say to myself, I am going to fail and flunk out of school. My life is over. And then I wake up. And I say, thank God it was just a dream. Have you ever had that? Something similar? Sure, an armored glad is just a dream. Absolutely. You know why I have that dream? I've learned, now whenever a dream repeats itself, it usually means we're not getting it. Okay? So that's why it repeats and so forth. And here's what I don't get. Sometimes in life, I will begin to talk to myself in ways that are not nice. Okay? I will say, John, you're failing. Life is not going rightly. You are doing a poor job. This is horrible. Life is about to end for you. That's what kind of things I say to myself. Now, I may be doing as well as anyone could reasonably do in whatever I'm doing. But that doesn't matter. The mind is a crazy thing. Moods are crazy. And when I get in a bad mood, I am not reasonable. And the dream is saying, John, you're acting like you signed up for a class that you know nothing about and didn't go to it. That's stinking thinking, right? Right? And so the dream is meant to jar me and wake me up and get me to begin to live in a different way and to love myself and to get some perspective. All right? I believe dreams exaggerate, especially when they're trying to make a point that we're in danger of not getting. And that's the situation with Solomon. Now, he asked for wisdom, and popular literature says that Solomon was what? The wisest person who ever lived. Have you heard that before? Yeah. That's what popular literature says. And indeed, he was a collector of wisdom. Did you know that? He had a large library of wisdom literature. The book of Ecclesiastes is sometimes attributed to him. The Song of Solomon, which is a beautiful love poem filled with wisdom about love, is attributed to Solomon. So he was known as a collector of wisdom. He was a shrewd man, a powerfully intelligent man who needed wisdom. He needed it. And so that's why this dream comes to him. Now, he's said to be the wisest man because right after this, there's an incident happening where two mothers come and they both claim the child is theirs. And you remember they argue about it? And he says, cut the child in half, give one half to one mother and one to the other because he doesn't know which one. And what happens? The one mother, who's the real mother, says, no! And so he knows who the real mother is. So he's said to be wise. All right? But we will see that Solomon, though he has a great capacity for wisdom, he has some flaws that will keep him from it if he doesn't listen to this dream. And so here, what is wisdom? First of all, what is wisdom? Let's see. Wisdom is applying God's guidance in everyday life. All right? Wisdom comes from God. It's not innate in any one of us. We want to get wisdom, the guidance for life, from God. God's our source. All right, so wisdom should be applied in everyday life. And so Solomon's the king. He needs to apply this in the everyday life of governing the great land of Israel. So here comes the dream. And it starts this way. God appears and asks, what shall I give you? What would you answer if God asked you, what do you want? What would you answer? That's a difficult question, isn't it? Could you answer with one thing? Would you want peace, joy, salvation of a brother or sister? Would you want wisdom, peace, salvation? What is it that we want? Health? So it's appropriate to be asked that as he enters into his kingship. But remember, this is asked in the dream. He's not conscious he's doing this. And Solomon begins to talk to God, and he talks to God in very flowery language. Okay? Which tells us something about Solomon, that perhaps he likes to impress people. And he wants to impress God. And so he begins like this. You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David. That's true, isn't it? God did show mercy to David, forgave David for many things, gave David a lot of love. Because David walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. Now that's only partially true, isn't it? Right? Was David always faithful, righteous, upright in heart? No. In fact, you remember he committed adultery with whom? Bathsheba. And not only that, he saw her bathing on the roof nearby at another building, noticed her, had somebody bring her over, all right? Had his way with her, and then realized she's pregnant, right? And she's married to his general. And so what did he do? He tried to maneuver things to cover it up. Didn't work, did it? And then what did he do? He had Uriah murdered. He murdered his own general and had his other soldiers arrange it. Not exactly uprightness in heart, faithfulness. All right. Then he goes on. And you have kept David, you have kept him for this great and steadfast love of yours. And now you've given him a son to sit on his throne today. All right? And that's true. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. That's not exactly true, is it? Who is he king in place of? Adoniah, his half-brother. Although I am only a little child. That's not true, is it? He is not a little child. He is in his 20s, but he's in the dream. In the dream, maybe he's a little child. We don't know. Or maybe he's just talking like a little child and he's in his 20s. We're not sure. It wasn't our dream, right? But it does tell us this. Solomon needs to be humble and innocent. He needs to get back in touch with what it means to be humble and innocent. So that's probably something he should look at. He should try to open himself up to being innocent. I do not know how to go out or come in. So he ought to admit when he doesn't know things. And your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people. A very good thing to ask for, isn't it? So he asked for wisdom to govern. That's a good thing. Able to discern between good and evil. Yes, that's a good thing. He'll need that. For who can govern this your people? So all this is said to God in the dream, right? Now it says that God's pleased with Solomon, that he had asked this. But he's pleased with Solomon where? In the dream. So Solomon thinks God's pleased with him. Solomon usually thinks God's pleased with him. And so God says to him, because you have asked this and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or for the life of your enemies. Did God not know he just killed Adoniah? Of course God knows. So why does God say it like this in the dream? To confront Solomon about his weaknesses. Solomon is someone who kills his enemies. Solomon is someone who wants riches, who wants to protect his life at all costs. But have you asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right? I now do according to your word. God says, I now do according to your word. Does that sound like God? Does God come up to you and say, and now I am going to do according to your word, Steve? And now I am going to do according to your word, Joe. Whatever you say, I will do. Does that sound like God? No. No, in fact, who is the Word? Jesus is the Word, right? The Word is God. God's the Word. God doesn't do according to our word. In fact, what do we pray? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, because God's word's perfectly done there. We want it to be done here. It's God's word that should be done. But Solomon has a problem. He thinks God exists for him. He's a king. He's God's king. And therefore, God will do what he wants. I give you what you have not asked, both riches and honor all your life. And then God says, no other king shall compare with you. Really? Sorry. Really? No other king compares with you? Does that sound like God? Is that reasonable? In fact, he's a whole lot like his father David, isn't he? Would God say that? No other person, no other king shall compare with you? I don't think so. But God says this in the dream to show Solomon how far his lack of humility, how far his arrogance, how far his will to power has gone already at the beginning. If he doesn't get this in check, he's going to have a ruinous life. If you walk in my ways, keep my statutes and commandments as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life. There's a little hint there that he's on the track to live like David lived, only worse. So, this is all interesting, isn't it? And so here we have it. The challenge of wisdom. So let's put that up on the screen. The challenge of wisdom is to know that God is the source. The king's not the source. The leaders aren't the source. No one is the source but God. God is the source of wisdom. And there are some things that trip Solomon up from receiving wisdom. And they're all outlined in this dream. And it's humility versus power. Can Solomon be humble to receive wisdom because in order to receive wisdom, you got to be humble. It's just the way it goes. In order to receive almost anything from God, humility helps. Arrogance, I'm not saying God can't ever give you something when you're arrogant. God, in God's overreaching plan, can. But generally, humility is a good attitude to have to receive something from God. Versus power. Power's dangerous. Power orders people around if we're not careful. Power says, what I want, I should have. Truth. Solomon would have trouble with the truth. The truth about himself. Now, Solomon was brilliant. And he made alliances with other nations. And prosperity, go back to the other slide. Prosperity happened in the land because of all his alliances. All right? It happened. And he built many, many things. You know, he built the temple, one of his greatest achievements. But he also built many palaces for himself. Did you know that? He did. He built so much that by the end of his reign, despite all the prosperity, they were running out of money. They were in debt. So you know what he did? To keep his building projects going and to curb down on the debt, he enslaved a large group of Hebrew poor people and made them work for nothing. It's what he did. And he wasn't very moderate either. Moderation's something that's almost lost these days. People don't do things in moderation. They should. But he lived in excess. You know how many wives he had? 700. I don't know. That seems a little excessive to me. I don't know. Does it seem a bit excessive to you? 700? Do you know the first one he added? Abishag, the one Adoniah wanted to marry, whom he had murdered. Isn't that interesting? And so this dream comes to him. And it's trying to warn him. You need wisdom. And if you don't get these things in check, Solomon, disaster's going to happen. And in fact, disaster would happen. He treated his leaders in government so poorly that at his death, the nation split into two. The northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Horrible. So it leaves us with this. Now you can put that slide up. Dreams tell us about ourselves. We must listen to the truth about ourselves before we dare to lead others. If we're not aware of our faults, we'll do what? Put them out on everybody else.